the red wave that's coming is going to be like the elevator doors opening up in The Shining. That's what I think.
What do you think now? What do you think now, Joe Rogan? Anyway, I love the bold predictions. And by the way, you can be wrong. You can be wrong. I can be wrong. I was a little bit wrong. But yeah, the bold predictions, and that's just one. We're gonna get to a lot more, but welcome to the show. This is the Damage Report. Yesterday was the election. It went very late. I'm very tired, so get off my back, America and the world. We're gonna technically do a show. That's all I can promise you. But the we is me and Jayar Jackson. Jayar, how's it going?
It's going. Look at this. It's a bright, sunny day in Los Angeles after a couple of days of gloom and rain. It's almost like the skies opened up, and the red wave stayed to itself. Didn't get unleashed upon us. I have thoughts about predictions, but I'll get into that as we go into all this.
Yeah. We're gonna talk about what actually happened. We're gonna talk about the implications going forward. We're gonna talk about a lot of different stuff. We're gonna eventually talk about why, despite me turning off the light in my room, it still looks like the sun is gonna contact my face. I don't know what that's about. But anyway, yeah, we're gonna get into a lot of it. So everyone, buckle up. We have non-election related news as well. In fact, we're gonna be checking in for the first time in a few weeks on what's going on, the invasion of Ukraine. We've got some updates on some stories involving political violence. We got a terrible, just a tragedy involving a cop, literally assaulting a good Samaritan, and then a little bit of TikTok fun. We got all sorts of stuff. So hit the like button, share the stream as we get ready for this. Yeah, if you want to send us any comments, tweets, or super chats, you can do that. And with all that said, Jayar, are you ready to start this thing?
I think we can do it.
Okay, let's start it off with this.
But I don't know about you guys. I'm shocked there was a no red wave. If you think about inflation, a 40-year high, crime, the worst since the 1980s, the unpopular president.
It's just clear that our country is completely divided now. You're either very conservative or you're radical and you're progressive and you're woke left. And the facts don't seem to matter here. Some of these individuals that won, when you look at their records, they are so extreme and so progressive. People are just dug in. They're dug in really deep right now. I heard last night this is an indictment on the Republican Party. Is it? I mean, how are these issues, when our country is in such a bad state right now, how is this not a red wave?
So like they're scrambling to why didn't it work? We were told it would happen. We told you it would happen, and there's little bits of truth in what she said, talking about people being like so dug in that they can't get what's going on. They're saying this is an indictment, but how could it be? Everything was so bad and then they didn't choose us. That's why it's an indictment. That's the whole point. And have you considered the possibility that the left is not actually super out of control and didn't actually represent most of the candidates last night? That there were radical extreme candidates, but it wasn't on the Democratic side. Can we talk about that? But before we catch up on the reactions, I do want to remind you of some of the bold claims going into last night with Donald Trump Jr. tweeting out bloodbath. I don't know if that was his prediction or his plans for the night. He's a weirdo rich guy. I don't know what he's doing. Christopher Rufo, who just 100% transparently has made up all the groomer CRT stuff. He's pushing for a Republican politics that is completely disconnected from truth and reality. He said the left has spent the past 2 years pushing chaos in our economy, critical race theory in our schools, and radical gender surgeries on our children. Tonight they pay the price. And his allies, I guess, in right-wing media like Matt Walsh saying the pollsters may not be asking about it, but there's no doubt that the Democrat Party was partly doomed by its decision to go all in on gender ideology. We successfully made this a losing political issue for them. Well, you'll note that he decided to say that they succeeded in making it a losing issue for the Dems before the results came in. The results have come in. Things didn't work out well for the right, Jayar. So if they succeeded in making the election about radical gender ideology and people largely rejected them, then apparently it was a losing political issue, but not necessarily for the Democrats. What do you think?
I'm wondering if that question will be asked. That's what I always wonder. This is the reason why, as we saw from the top there with Rogan making these predictions, it's gonna be a red wave. It's gonna be devastating red wave. And then when it doesn't happen, the problem with making these types of predictions is then you have to say why it didn't.
Yep.
And many people, yes, to be honest, some are, but they're saying maybe Donald Trump. Rick Santorum said it without saying his name because he's a coward. But the thing is, you have to maybe start looking at yourself. That is if you want to maybe win in the future based off of doing something for the voters. Because voters choose, right? They assume just because of the situation that they portrayed to everyone, that it was an automatic, they have to choose the Republicans, right? Not if Republicans don't give people a reason to choose them. Again, that's why there was no blue wave or no blue consistency or wall to keep the red wave away. None of that happened. It was in the middle because many people don't trust Democrats because they do nothing. And many people don't trust Republicans because they do horrific things. In fact, they were campaigning on doing horrific things. So again, if you think all these things were up on the ballot before the election happened, and you see it didn't work out that way, 2 + 2 should equal, hey, maybe those policies that we were pushing and our approach to having zero policies or our approach to complaining about everything that's wrong in the country that we continue to perpetuate and vote against fixing, maybe that's the beginning of our problem.
Yeah, maybe.
They won't go there though.
Yeah, no. We'll get to a little bit more on the lesson that Matt Walsh would like to take out of this in a bit, but yeah, it's like we know that they've talked about it endlessly. It's been all over right-wing media. They've been whipping people into a frenzy with libs of TikTok, and they've been getting bomb threats called in. Like, you succeeded in doing what you wanted to do, but you don't get to determine what effect it has on the electorate. And clearly, it isn't the massive, combined with all of the issues like the actual inflation and crime and all the real stuff that's actually happening. You had to have actually damaged your chances in what you've chosen to focus on. And that does not mean, by the way, that, oh, we're good, I guess it didn't matter that they did this. No, it's still bad. They've passed legislation in multiple states. They've successfully fear-mongered against and demonized whole communities. People's lives have been ruined by this. Doctors are terrified of being murdered. They've succeeded to that extent. It just isn't necessarily a massive winner politically. But let's turn to a couple of the other predictions. Lauren Boebert started the day tweeting out, "They called you cockroaches. They called you cult members. They called you extremists. They called you terrorists. Today we call them losers." Or maybe tomorrow or the next day. I need a little bit more time for the results to come in because, oh my God, I'm still losing. As of this morning with, I think it was 93% of the vote at this point, Lauren Boebert is still trailing Adam Frisch in her bid to get reelected to Congress. Now, look, I'm gonna be a little bit of a downer. I do think that she is in the end going to win, but she was not supposed to be trailing going into the next day after the election. And again, it's this thing where, like, if you're Marjorie Greene and you're in one of the reddest districts ever, you could do literally whatever you want and it's fine. But it's possible that with Lauren Boebert, maybe they expected you to actually accomplish something, like maybe just doing like photo shoots like you would for Shooter's Grill. That's a big winner for right-wing media, but maybe your constituents expect more. I don't know. What do you think? You think Adam Frisch has a chance?
I hope so. That's the thing. And of course, depending on where these last votes come from and how many were active and mail-in ballots, all these types of other factors to come into this. But again, even if she does pull it off, doesn't this give you a second to pause and say, maybe I did something wrong? Doesn't mean you have to do everything differently or you're completely wrong. Therefore, she becomes a super lib and decides to do something for the people who would actually benefit from it. Oh God, please. Well, really, maybe you think, maybe I should actually act like I'm legislating more. Maybe I shouldn't be putting out ads about how I'm bringing my Glock to Congress. And that being the reasons why you think people need to vote for you. Or then harassing your neighbors. People within your neighborhood and within your district, they talk. They heard about that. We talked about it on my show. How she and her husband are like pariah. People don't like you. You think they want you to be in any kind of position of power and influence over their lives any longer? I guess to a certain degree, people are still there with it. But if you're expecting something different where she puts out tweets like she did beforehand and she's looking at this battle for her position like this, there has to be a moment when you go, I did something wrong.
Yeah. Look, I do still think that she's going to pull it out. She's the incumbent. She has, like money and a little bit of notoriety. Like, and the conservatives really do like her, so that's gonna help. But yeah, just like doing it, like you mentioned the bringing the Glocks. Remember when she like filmed the ad supposedly of her walking around with her gun, and then it turned out that it hadn't actually been there because you can't actually do that, so she was lying about it. It's just like, you are a clown in a book. That's what you are.
Yeah, and by the way, you can't talk about inflation, the border, our economy, jobs, and all this stuff. Talk about it, but then not say anything else except for, look at this, look at it. I'm looking at it. What are you gonna do? What are you there for? I can sit here from my couch and say, look at the economy, look at inflation, look at my grocery bills. I'm not in a position to do anything about it from at least her position. So you're there for a reason. Be there for that reason.
Yeah, well, she's there to raise the alarm on the startling increase in people majoring in lesbian dance theory. That's apparently what she thinks. Oh, hold on, really? Okay, we have other stuff to move on to.
Isn't that crazy?
People are saying I'm not backing up with math that I think she's going to win. I'm literally looking at estimations of where the remaining votes will be coming from, and it looks like it's going to benefit her. I think it's going to be tight, but based on what I'm seeing in Mesa County, in Pueblo County, I think it is possible that she could come back. I think it's going to be tight. I'm not saying it's not going to be tight, and I want him to win. Not a traitor. Everyone back off. But
John,
this is just my gut. I'm looking at the estimations of remaining votes.
Just because you're booked on Joe Rogan's show doesn't mean you have to hide of your true intentions. There's a Boebert wave, according to John Iadarola.
I just want to get on Tucker Carlson's show, to like chuckle along with his dumb jokes. That's all I want. But anyway, we're gonna move on to one of the other big parts of this. But I do want to just briefly say that when it comes to acceptance of reality, like the election deniers and stuff. So we have good news, bad news. The bad news is that like 200 candidates at a variety of levels that have rejected the results of the 2020 election have won. But in some of the most high profile races, like for governor, Mastriano lost, Cox lost, LePage lost, Zeldin lost, Deal, Mitchells, Bailey, Jensen, Dixon, Ganal. These are all Republican nominees who rejected, everything, and they've lost. Like, and maybe choosing like a Tudor Dixon in the end will have been a bad idea. Maybe choosing someone not just based on the fact that they were in right-wing media and they have a ridiculous name. Like maybe there should be something else that's helping you choose your candidates. But it is very good news to see people like Mastriano and LePage being rejected in this case, Dixon as well. Like these are people who very much would have seen it as their obligation, their duty to mess with the 2024 election. So it's good that they're not going to be in power.
I think they're starting to, I hate to say it this way because I always say we overestimate the general intelligence of our country. But I think they may be overestimating what it is that's gonna trigger them to vote for you. Because people are paying more attention. People are getting snippets of their information, of course, online and stuff. But at least in those snippets, what they're looking for is a snippet of a solution.
Yeah.
So maybe give solution snippets.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and by the way, look, the good news, bad news. Good news, I like that they appear to have lost or not succeeded to the extent that they obviously could have because they chose crazy people. Like I don't want parties to be advantaged at, like, man, it can really, the lighting in here can shift a lot from moment to moment. Is the Death Star above me? What is going on? The sun has been blotted out. Anyway, I'm assuming eventually I'll be back in the light.
That's the red wave coming over your house.
Yeah, I don't remember what point I was gonna make. Also, by the way, it turns out that abortion, defense of democracy, these are issues that people actually did care about. And I'm not just saying that because the Democrats did better than I thought. Like you look at the actual exit polling and people did care about that. Now that's not an ideal place for us to be. I don't want progressives to have to play defense on stuff like bodily autonomy and democracy. Those should be givens. We should be playing offense on making our country what it should be. But at least it's good to know that the country's on our side. Okay, the Death Star has passed on. It's moving on towards Alderaan, and you can see me now. That's good news. I've been shadow banned. That's what people are saying.
We have the worst inflation in 4 decades, the worst collapse in real wages in 40 years, the worst crime wave since the 1990s, the worst border crisis in US history. We have Joe Biden, who is the least popular president since Harry Truman, since presidential polling happened, and there wasn't a red wave. That is a searing indictment of the Republican Party. That is a searing indictment of the message that we have been sending to the voters. They looked at all of that and looked at the Republican alternative and said, no thanks. The Republican Party needs to do a really deep introspection look in the mirror right now, because this is an absolute disaster.
Those are harsh words, and I think also accurate words being said on Fox News on the night of the midterms by Mark Thiessen. And the question is, will they actually learn? This is obviously a massive lost opportunity. The historic pattern is that the party out of power picks up seats, and they're going to kind of like technically do that. But they had a massive opportunity to win governor's races, as well as not only take over the Senate, but honestly, they could have been up by 3 or 4 seats potentially. And they wasted that. Now, this is a different conversation than to what extent should Trump be involved in this. But Jayar, you are old enough to remember back in, I think, 2012, the Republicans got a shellacking, and they needed to seriously take a look at the state of their party and come up with a new path, a more rational, reasonable path. And they clearly didn't do that. So this is another opportunity for them to learn. Do you think on the issues they've been talking about, the election denial, all of that, what direction do you think they're going to go in as we move towards 2024?
Well, it depends on how many people are thinking like Mark Thiessen. Because again, this is surface level type of stuff. Thiessen was talking about all the grievances within the country, as if that's a Republican issue. There's such a focus on solely their party people and the people that they think support them only, that they don't understand that there's another whole portion of the country that might think a little differently, but actually dislikes the problem with inflation, dislikes the problem with our wages issues, and dislikes all the stuff that's happening that they detail. Democrats and libs hate that stuff too. They're just looking for a way for it to end. And every time those things are proposed, what we end up seeing is the folks who expected to be given that position openly and directly push back against it. There was a full-on sheet that I'm trying to remember the congressman who posted it. He put how many percentage of Republicans voted against like the baby formula stuff, border security, gas prices, all these things that they said is worried about destroying the economy. People are beginning to understand which party is maybe not doing much for it versus the party that's trying to make these things worse. It's a grievance issue. So if you want to grieve about it, Thiessen does a good job of that. But what he didn't say, maybe he said it in a fuller clip, was the Republican Party's in trouble. Therefore, we need to address inflation, not bitch and complain about it. We need to address these problems, not just complain about it. People don't want complaints. We've all got that already. We're good at that. How about we get some solutions? Maybe they're starting to see it, but you asked me what my prediction is. What they're gonna think this means is we're supposed to grieve harder.
Yeah, and look, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult to convince, especially their media arm, to stop doing the thing that, while it didn't lead to midterm wins, is working for them. Like if you're these media figures, if you're an independent right-wing media or whatever, like you're getting a big audience by like trying to encourage people to kill the trans community or whatever. It didn't result in the Senate being taken over necessarily. So why would you change at that point? And when you're out there convincing the Republican base in primaries to only accept a particular brand of weirdo, then you might have reasonable Republicans that want to run the next time around, and they might have a much better chance of winning the general election. But how are they going to get through the primaries? The Republican base that votes in primaries are out of their GD mind at this point. So they're really between a rock and an insane place. And by the way, like this is eventually, we're gonna be talking a little bit about who should be the figurehead of the Republican Party. But like, you remember the quote from earlier? We showed you the tweet of Matt Walsh, like they wanted this to be about radical ideology, which I don't remember, but okay. So we're gonna make it about that. Well, now he's saying, after it became clear that this was not a red tsunami, most Americans are wildly dissatisfied with the direction of the country, but Republicans weren't able to harness that dissatisfaction. That speaks to a party without any kind of coherent or compelling national message. We need new leadership, top to bottom. Which, if that's the first thing you've ever read from Matt Walsh, seems pretty reasonable. I think he is right. Also, he's one of the chief messengers for the Republican Party, and he chose to make it about all that crazy stuff that didn't win. I'm not saying he's the leader of the Republican Party or anything. He's, a third tier clone of Ben Shapiro. But people like him are the ones who pushed for these crazy candidates. So if they do need to clear out from top to bottom their leaders, why wouldn't they be benefited from getting rid of people like Matt Walsh, who clearly are advancing their own interests and not the interests of the party?
Because what was left off of that was, what is that coherent and compelling national message? What is it? What is it? If anybody can answer that, I'd love to hear it. What is the Republicans' coherent and compelling national message? Because so far it's been just that. Look at these trans kids and look at them joining sports teams, sports bathrooms, locker rooms. Like I said, the same things with the inflation issues. All of these things they bring up, there's no message. It's, what do they think a message is? You're from a position in a platform where you can say what you want and people can hear it, take it in, and analyze it. You haven't said anything yet. So what is that message, bro? What's the new leadership gonna talk about? And by the way, John, I'm not one of those people who thinks that pundits are supposed to have like legislative answers. We're not within the Congress where these discussions are had, where bills are written, and there's these like 45-page things and all that stuff. We're not privy to it, we're not part of it. By the way, these guys have people who write that stuff for them because they're not always the smartest folks there. But the thing is if you don't have to necessarily have the full answers from Matt Walsh's point of view, but at least have we should go in this direction. We should have this approach since you have opinions. What's your next opinion?
Yeah, and who thinks that like Matt Walsh and Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro are gonna turn from like making an entire monologue about some third grade teacher to like seriously talking about wages?
Yeah.
Like, or outsourcing. The cost of prescription medication is really high. We're gonna be diving in for an hour-long conversation, bringing in doctors and active. Who thinks they're gonna do that?
And by the way, John, I'm gonna tell you why they can't say anything like that, because it'll be completely opposite to the people who've paid them to say nothing. So if you say, man, inflation's off the charts, man, these gas prices are crazy, red wave is coming, we're gonna bring down the price of gas. The way you bring down the price of gas is to come after the folks who are gouging us on that. That's not what they're willing to do. So they're stuck saying nothing.
Yeah, they have to pretend to be populists or whatever without ever challenging corporations at all. Except maybe in a shallow way, if the corporation like has a lesbian kiss in a movie, then they can criticize it. But they can't advocate for people's interests over corporate interests, and that is a major limiting factor for them. We're gonna see how they try to get past that. And by the way, like we're over the next 2 years, we're gonna be talking about 2024 a lot, so we don't need to focus on it too much right now. But it's entirely possible that the same sort of like not necessarily inflation is gonna be the main issue, but everyone seems to think we're gonna be hitting a recession. That's not gonna help Biden or whoever the Democratic candidate going forward is. In particular, it's not gonna help Biden if he's still the candidate. So there is an economic case to be made. There's just a lot of incentives for them to not even try to make it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna go to our break. When we come back, we need to talk about Donald Trump. He wanted this midterm to be about him, so okay, let's make it about him. We're gonna be debating his future in the Republican Party. If you're just joining us now, we got a lot more to talk about. Hit the like button, and on the other side of this break, we're gonna respond to some of your comments. Okay, everybody, now that it's dark and it's just you and me, let's turn to our next topic, starting with this video.
Tonight, win or lose, the results for Republicans, how much of that will be because of Donald Trump?
Well, I think if they win, I should get all the credit. And if they lose, I should not be blamed at all, okay?
Well, yeah, that would be nice, but that's not actually how it works, buddy. So let's talk about Donald Trump and how much of the credit he deserves for the red tsunami apparently dissipating miles offshore. It never reached us, so is he responsible? Well, he doesn't want you to think that. In fact, he's doing a little bit of preemptive PR for himself, bleeding out 174 wins and 9 losses, a great evening. And the fake news media, together with their partner in crime, the Democrats, are doing everything possible to play it down. Amazing job by some really fantastic candidates. Fantastic people like Mastriano and Pope and Oz. They're gonna be great in whatever the hell their next job is. And by the way, so I'm pointing out, like, okay, you're 174 and 9. Who the hell knows what that 174 represents? What it doesn't represent is 174 Senate races, buddy. Or, for instance, candidates like Don Bolduc, who didn't need to be the candidate, and they had a chance of winning, but unfortunately they went with Trump's guy. Trump is immediately fleeing from any responsibility, bleeding. Don Bolduc was a very nice guy, but he lost tonight when he disavowed, after his big primary win, his longstanding stance on capital E election, capital F fraud in the 2020 presidency. Had he stayed strong and true, he would have won easily. Lessons learned. Are the lessons learned though? Like, because I feel like I don't really care about Don Bolduc's lessons or whatever. Like, you could theoretically learn a lesson. He lost. You supported him. You supported him throughout, and he was a bad candidate. And that's just the beginning. There are a ton of bad candidates that he sort of forced on the Republican Party, Jayar. So I think we all agree that whether he accepts responsibility, whether there's any consequences for him, he definitely deserves responsibility, right?
Oh, of course, and of course, that's the most Trump-like statement ever. If there's credit to be given, it should be given to me. If there's blame to be handed out, of course, I should avoid all of that. I'm Donald effing Trump. What are you talking about? You kidding me? Now, this guy is one of the ones who likes to promote how he's the leader of the party. Everyone does what I say. He's even saying it in that tweet in a way, of that truth in a way. He made the big mistake of not continuing to push this big election lie, which I keep pushing. Which position of power are you in electorally? At least actually officially, yes, you're still the head of the party itself. But did you get elected or did you lose? Never before, well, maybe not never before. I wonder how far back history this could take. But an entire party follows the loser. Yeah. Did they follow H.W. Bush after he lost after one term? Hell no. They called H.W. the biggest Republican loser ever. The reason W was so happy to win his backup or his reelection is because he's like, my dad avoided it. I can't let the Bush name become the one name that loses. This is a thing. How Donald Trump still has a stranglehold on these cowardly people is astounding. Yeah. But him being, I'm gonna make a quick sports analogy. If you're the GM of a team and you've collected all these big names together and you're like, I've got this guy playing point guard, I got this guy shooting guard, I got this big man at center, we're gonna dominate. In fact, we're gonna win a championship, we're going undefeated. And then you trickle and maybe make the playoffs and lose in the first round. You know what happens? People say, what happened, bro? What happened? Why is it in this case? You can say, I'm the GM of this party. I put people in place. They're players, they're gonna win. Big names, they follow me. They run the plays the way I like to run them. And then they lose, what is it you can say? When any sports figure gets in front of the sports media and they just made a guarantee that they're gonna win and they lose, you know what happens? They call that bulletin board material. And after that bulletin board material pans out to you losing, you're supposed to kind of go cower and hide, not still talk. But in politics, you can say, it's not my fault.
Yeah, you're totally right. Like, this is not the way it works. Like, if you're the incumbent president and you lose, you don't just hang around totally determining everything that happens. Even Obama, who won twice, he's occasionally popped up. Like, he actually influenced the 2020 primary a little bit before Super Tuesday. But it's not like every candidate gets chosen based on whether Obama likes them. And Obama was a successful, popular president. This is so weird. We think he should get responsibility. Not everyone thinks that. Let's be a little bit balanced, a little bit unbiased, and give one of his defenders a chance to make the case. Let's jump into this video.
Now, they're trying to blame President Trump today. And I want to tell you how short-sighted and ridiculous that is. It is pathetic. The people that are running out saying, it's Trump's fault. No, that is a late, pathetic, wimpy, easy mindset. Here's why it's not Trump's fault. Trump has been being politically persecuted for the past 2 years now, ever since January 6th. He went out and did 30 Save America rallies all over the country. he endorsed something like 285 candidates. He held over 50 fundraisers, helped raise over $350 million.
Okay, so it's her job to try to defend him. After all, she wants to be his VP pick in 2024. So I get that. And I'm going to extend her the olive branch of assuming that she actually thinks the things that she's saying there, that it's not just political expedience. She actually thinks this is a good argument for why you should give Donald Trump credit to the extent that they succeeded, saying he did all these rallies, he endorsed a bunch of people, he raised a bunch of money. But this is why her being incredibly simple-minded is hurting her ability to make the case there. She seems to be saying he did this and this and this. What more do you want from him? No, they're saying, what if we'd gotten less from him? Maybe his rallies hurt us. Maybe the endorsements really hurt us. Maybe that's not actually what the Republican Party needed. Maybe it wasn't slightly more Trump. Maybe it was no Trump at all. And then they would have swept this thing. So I think that's the actual argument that is going on right now amongst Republicans who are able to think at a slightly deeper layer than Marjorie Greene. It is very specifically them choosing buffoonish celebrity candidates when they could have easily won with boring regular old fashioned Republicans.
You notice how the narrative changed, especially with Marjorie Taylor Greene there, at least in that instance. She, she talked about how Trump has been getting attacked, and it sounds like to me that that's an excuse. He was getting attacked, and therefore that's the problem. That's the reasons why these attacks came at him, and it brought down his. It's not his fault. It's everyone else's fault for attacking him. But while he's being attacked, I hear Trump derangement syndrome. I hear the patriots are coalescing around Donald Trump. They know that the fix is in. They realize that their real hero is Donald Trump. Based off of all these attacks, are the attacks working? Are the attacks not working? Because when the attacks are happening that you claim, he's too strong for it to be hurting him because he's all powerful Jesus, right? So is he weak or is he strong? It's the same argument back and forth with Joe Biden. Is he weak or is he strong? It doesn't matter. Whichever scenario I need to put him in to create this scenario that he's the greatest man that's ever lived, I'll just say that. And by the way, you mentioned the money. He raised all this money, Marjorie Taylor Greene said. One of the biggest concerns and frustrations Republicans had with Donald Trump was he raised all this money. And guess who got all that money? Yeah. Donald effing Trump.
Yeah,
Republicans.
Exactly. Yeah, and a lot of that money was just spent on paying for the fundraising efforts. But again, she's not inclined to look into this sort of stuff, and she's not really capable of doing this sort of stuff. But okay, let's look forward. What is Donald Trump gonna take from the midterm elections? Well, we know that he has decided to just think, analyze, and really come to some conclusions. Oh wait, no, he's screaming at people. Apparently one of his advisors told Jim Acosta he's super PO'd. He's screaming at everyone over how humiliating it was. And if you've been humiliated, the way that you mitigate that is by raging like a toddler that you've been humiliated. That's how you regain your confidence, I guess. Anyway, Maggie Haberman reports he is indeed furious, particularly about Mehmet Oz, and is blaming everyone who advised him to back Oz, including his wife Melania, describing it as not her best decision, according to people close to him. You loved Oz. How are you blaming this on Melania? Maybe Melania liked him. Maybe it was a bad call on her part. Wait, sorry, it wasn't her call. You're the one doing the endorsing, and it's totally in line with all of your other insane celebrity endorsements. You're not gonna be able to get out of culpability by just pointing to Melania. How is that a defense?
Oh, but anyway, I love this. Sorry.
No way in, because he's now scrambling to figure out what to do next week. He had big plans, they might be changing, but I don't know, maybe he'll have to consult with Melania. Apparently she makes all the big decisions.
I want you guys to just imagine, I know this happens a lot when it comes to political conversations. Imagine this is Joe Biden. Imagine this is Barack Obama, who did win 2 terms. And then he endorses all these folks and damn near all of them lose. And then he says, it's Michelle's fault. Yep. And then he says, those damn advisors told me to go and endorse this guy and that woman and that other crazy person. Can you imagine the ridicule and the pushback and the laughter that would be coming from these conservative circles? Be like, he's blaming his wife. What kind of man is this? We're talking about from Republican thought processes, because as Marjorie Taylor Greene has said before, a woman is supposed to be secondary to her husband. In fact, she doesn't exist unless she's married, right? So this guy now leaning on his wife, this powerful alpha male who runs the party and you want to eventually run the country, is blaming his wife, his supermodel wife, who did nothing but create an ugly Christmas decorations in the White House. It's her fault. He's crying over this. It's nobody's fault but everyone else's. This is who they support. This is your champion.
Yeah, look, and honestly, as much as I didn't like that Christmas display, it actually looked like the shining blood wave had passed through on that Christmas. She delivered the red tsunami when it came to those trees better than he would. And like, by the way, it's not even just about owning up to your own things. I don't believe it. I don't think that he actually put faith in her decision and she got, like, I think that was his choice. So it's not only cowardly and pathetic to put it on her, I just think it's inaccurate. You can blame her for all sorts of terrible decisions, like the "I really don't care" jacket and all that stuff, being with Trump in the first place. But Mehmet Oz is Trump's fault. And so what about Herschel Walker? Is that on Melania? What about Bolduc? Is that on Don Jr.? What about Blake Masters? I don't know, did Tiffany advise you on that? Is any of this your responsibility? Anyway, very briefly, we're going to see, but apparently people are pushing to reschedule his presidential announcements next week. Some asking whether he's going to, saying it's risky, he's been wounded. But the thing is, he's in a very difficult position because if he announces right now, it could look really bad for him because a lot of people are openly questioning whether he should be the leader. But if he doesn't announce, it is a massive demonstration of weakness because he's clearly gonna be retreating from how bad he looks. So he's really damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. I'm leaning towards I still want him to because I think him announcing and being in the news the next few weeks between now and the runoff election in Georgia is gonna really hurt Herschel Walker's chances. But then think about that. If he announces and then Herschel Walker, one of his chosen candidates, loses, he's gonna look even weaker. So no matter how you slice it, the next couple of months are probably not gonna be fun for Donald Trump.
I'm kind of looking forward. November 15th was the date, right? That he teased this his announcement, big announcement. And he did that because maybe advisors told him to do this because you're not fully sure what was gonna happen yesterday. And then once what happened or didn't happen, now the decision is what's that announcement gonna be? Is it gonna be, I'm gonna continue to be running as the head of this party? Not for president, but at least running as the head of this party. Right now he's consulting with leadership or at least maybe his cabal of supporters to be like, how do we play this now, Donald? It's never about true honesty, it's how do we play it? So what's the real reality? That he's a loser. Let's keep it real. Always has been, but he always has to make sure he shows something different than what the reality is. That's the only way he's made any kind of name for himself.
Well, okay, we're gonna take our second break a little bit early. Come back. We've got a little bit of rally footage we're gonna talk about. There's a lot of stuff that we could talk about with Ron DeSantis's big night and how that plays into Trump. We'll talk about that tomorrow. I want to get to a little bit of this rally footage and then get into some of the other news, including some more political violence. We'll have that for you after this. I don't know why I think that if I just keep refreshing the results on Boebert's race, I'll get them sooner, especially when they auto refresh. But anyway, I would love to get some more votes in this, please. For now, though, why don't we talk about some news? Let's jump into this video.
Could it be rigged, is what I'm saying, in favor of Trump?
It could be, but that's a real stretch because Trump and the Republicans have never had the on-the-ground machinery that the Democrats have had for 100 years.
And do you think that it was a stolen election in 2020?
Knocked out of my mind. I watched it myself with my own eyes at 3 o'clock in the morning on TV.
What did you see?
I saw all the ladies in Georgia pull all those ballots out, and I watched her run the same ones over and over. And I watched it with my own eyes. I don't need anyone to tell me it was stolen. I watched it.
The government and the state government in Georgia said that was totally innocent, and that was
they did.
Well, it's a Republican government there, so I'm just curious.
No, it's a Republican government.
Trump won't lose.
Well, he lost once. He could lose again. What if it happens again?
I think it's impossible for him to lose again. You can't rig another election like they did the last one. Public won't stand it.
My president, that one who won.
But he won and then he lost. So if he runs,
he didn't lose.
He didn't lose?
No, not at all.
So tell me about that. I thought Joe Biden's president.
Well, he's in the White House, but he's not the real president.
Is this how I sound when I say that I enjoyed the last season of Game of Thrones? Do I seem like I'm just trying to cope by pretending everything worked out the way that I wanted? Because this just sounds pathetic. Like, it is just taken as a given that every Republican is going to say, no, Trump couldn't. I mean, how could he possibly lose? I mean, he didn't lose in 2020, even though he did. He didn't get a majority of the votes in 2016. Like, let's bear in mind, while Donald Trump did occupy the White House for 4 years, he's never gotten a majority of the country to support him. And so to assume that he's their best bet in 2024, it is such a massive leap of illogic at that point. And they seem very willing to take it. They have an alternative Trump in Ron DeSantis, who has all of his own issues and everything. And I do think Trump is gonna absolutely shred him once they get on a debate stage. But the loyalty they have to this guy who has just repeatedly delivered losses for them really fast. 2016, he didn't get the most votes. Still gets into the presidency, that's fine. 2018, people are so mad at him that they give the Dems the House. 2020, he loses as an incumbent and delivers the Senate to the Democrats. 2022, despite historic, all that and everything, his candidates helped to seize defeat from the jaws of victory. Why would they still have loyalty to this guy who has undercut them at every turn?
I know why, John. He started his entire campaign coming down that damn escalator with a message of supremacy. Doesn't not always necessarily white supremacy, as we saw there's people of other ethnicities that are still on board. It's Christian supremacy. Of course, it's the white supremacy. It's rich elite guy supremacy. It's all of that stuff, but it's masked and I represent you. So he was holding his Bible upside down as he was attacking protesters. He came down talking about how those dirty Latinos are coming up from other countries and I can't believe that they're coming here to destroy our country. You set this whole tone for anybody who identifies with you. We're better than everyone else. So when you finally do lose, which he did in 2020, you can't accept it because pride is a very strong feeling for these types of folks. You can't admit. So our supremacy that we've been preaching for the 4 years that Trump was in office, you mean it doesn't exist? Wait. You mean those dirty immigrants are actually okay human beings? You mean the majority of the country doesn't agree with us? You mean the supremacy that I say I have over you? You mean me saying my Christian background is better than everything else doesn't work? No, it doesn't. And then you have to conform, you have to change, you have to reevaluate who you are and how you approach these things. But he's not gonna allow them to do that. He tells them, there's nothing like a big cheat. They cheated me. You can't accept that you finally have this proof that you are not supreme in your religion, in your ethnicity, in your background, where you're from, and in your money. Let's keep it real, because the folks who are poor and support people like this, the only reason they connect to them this much is they think, maybe one day I will be rich.
100%. Yeah, just stop trying to be superior, just try to be good. Can you try that?
Jesus, it's so much easier.
Yeah, well, look, there's a lot more where that came from. Michael Shor's interviews at the Trump rally in Miami, available at Rebel HQ. So go check that out. It is bananas stuff. But with that, I want to hopefully get through both parts of this next story. So whenever we're ready, let's move to this to the D block.
There is a major media outlet. There is a major news channel that is fueling political violence in this country, and we're acting like it's normal. It's not normal. Like, I can tell you 110%, one of the largest sources of death threats that I get is Tucker Carlson.
Wow.
Every time that dude puts my name in his mouth, the next day, I mean, this is like what stochastic terrorism is. It's like this indirect, it's like when you use a very large platform to turn up the temperature and target an individual until something happens.
So look, AOC, I think, is 100% right. And honestly, she's being brave in even admitting that, because you know that message, that quote is gonna get to Tucker Carlson and he is going to delight in it. He is going to love knowing that his coverage of her directly and predictably leads to death threats. And by the way, like, you have your obligation, I guess, as a broadcaster to do what you're gonna do. But as a human, like, imagine not caring about that. Like, imagine if I found out definitively that when I talk about, I don't know, who do I talk about? Like Marjorie Greene. Like, some of you guys go out there and you talk about how you want to kill her. Like imagine, and then just going forward, and not changing anything about the way that I talk about that. Like, imagine how ridiculous that would be, but that is what we're seeing here. And so he's probably gonna do it even more. We know the effect it has on her mental health. She was talking there about stochastic terrorism. He gave a denunciation of the concept of stochastic terrorism. So he's fully aware of what he's doing. He knows the effect, but he's just gonna keep doing it. And we're gonna be talking a little bit more about some recent political violence, Jayar, but it just sucks to see it so predictable.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up Marjorie Taylor Greene and things that could potentially come in her way. She's talked about how she's been swatted lately. Again, I said it when it was happening. I haven't seen, definitely at least not mainstream or pundits from the left saying, ha, that's right, hope they kill you next time. It's just, it's crazy. And Steve Scalise got shot, they won't let that go either. And they keep pushing this narrative that people are going, ha, go shoot Steve Scalise. It's just not the case.
Yeah. Anyway, there's more of that interview out there. The Democratic Party has to take this more serious, like not just for AOC, but for others as well. There's more young progressives who are gonna be joining Congress as a result of this election. They're gonna be facing a lot of these threats too. The leadership has got to have their backs. Anyway, let's turn now to sort of the effect of this. When you spend show after show after show telling people that the Democrats are not just bad or wrong, but that they're insane, that they're Satanists, that they eat children, some people are gonna take matters into their own hands. And I'm not even referring here to the attack on Paul Pelosi. There's a guy in Ohio who apparently shot his neighbor because he thought he was a Democrat. Austin Gene Combs was taken into custody by Butler County Sheriff's deputies just before noon Monday after the shooting. Investigators found Anthony Lee King dead from multiple gunshot wounds. You can see a little picture right here. And the victim's son told police dispatchers, "My neighbor just shot my dad. He's come over multiple times making statements. He's insane." Caller's mother sobbed in the background, told dispatchers that King had been cutting grass and doing yard work when she went inside to let their dog out, and that's when she heard gunshots. "I look in the backyard and that man is walking away from my husband, and my husband is on the ground. He's come over like 4 times confronting my husband because he thought he was a Democrat. Why, please, I don't understand." And look, this person is clearly insane. And America has a certain number of clearly insane people. So it is on us to figure out the responsible, ethical way to communicate that doesn't predictably trigger insane people like this to go after their perceived political opponents.
We may figure it out, but the people who've cultivated this type of behavior, who have fueled these folks to do this stuff, they have no qualms with it. They have no issues with this happening. It's just a dead person. It's okay. That family's devastation, the fact that this woman witnessed her husband get murdered like this, that never even entered their brains. It's where is my power? And by the way, the guy who did this killing, F him too, from the same people who fueled him to do this. Who cares? He's gonna go to jail the rest of his life. We don't care. Where's my power? Just understand the real people involved in this from every aspect. If you actually care about the MAGA people, the foot soldiers, they're also getting dispensed and put off to the side for the glory of Donald Trump and Kerry Lake and all the rest of these Republicans who are like to push all this anger and violence. Because it's just the nature of who they are. They love violence, love it.
Yeah, and like, there's raw stories reporting on this. A few places have, but obviously in this case, it's not Pelosi's family, so it's not gonna be national news. Arguably, it should be the exact same level of news, right? A clear political motive. In this case, it actually resulted in a death. It's happening right after the attack on Paul Pelosi, right after a week and a half of Republicans poo-pooing political violence and pretending that it's not actually a problem. Well, someone has lost their life, and this is probably the last time that you'll actually hear about it. Isn't that fun?
Probably not the last time it'll happen, though, sadly.
No, certainly not. So when AOC says that she's worried about this stuff, like this, if that guy had come across AOC instead of his neighbor, what would have happened? Anyway, we got a lot more news coming. Will we 30 seconds? 15 seconds? Okay. We have a lot more news coming up in the aftermath, everybody. So thank you on the linear platforms of the podcast for watching. Much appreciated. More news, including non-election related news coming up after this.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Adarola. I'll see you soon.